gang, I'm JP and welcome back to Egotastic FunTime! In the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, Broken Pieces, the devastating truth behind the synth attack on Mars is finally revealed. Picard learns Agnes murdered Bruce Maddox, or who they were led to believe is Bruce Maddox, but isn't. Rios deals with his past, all while Seven deals with her future as the surrogate Borg Queen. In this video, we're going to talk about Dr. Girardi's redemption, the Tal Shiar's deception, Admiral Clancy's inflection, a TNG connection, and how this Picard series has gender bias against those who can't get erections. Also, Bruce Maddox still might be alive, but first, we finally get a glimpse of why the Zhat Vash hate synths so much and they want them all dead. A long time ago, they discovered an octuple star system containing 8 suns and a single dead world placed right in the middle. Convenient. On this planet, they come across a 200,000-year-old warning that allowing synthetic life to expand past a certain point will cause the destruction of the galaxy, or something like that. We as the viewers weren't, of course, given all the information that there is to know, because obviously it would make us go insane and instantly want to kill ourselves. So I'd probably prefer an ancient ring that warned us all against the dangers of not washing our hands appropriately at this point, but hey. Like I've been saying since this series began, the Romulans aren't evil, or they don't think they're evil. They're trying to work for the greater good, to help save lives by killing advanced synthetic beings, because that's what they were warned against. The only problem is that Romulans suck at doing anything without being paranoid, secretive, and destructive in their ways. The Romulans are the worst people you'd want to be the keepers of this ancient knowledge, you guys. We now know that once Dr. Soong created Data all those years ago, the Romulans worked hard to implant Commodore O into Starfleet to keep an eye on the situation and help ensure the Federation eventually put a stop to all synth research. We also learned that Commodore O, Ramda, and Hot Pants Narissa were behind the Mars synth attack that resulted in the death of over 90,000 lives in the hopes that the Federation would take the bait and ban the synths. Like Picard said to Rios in this episode, this is where the Federation betrayed themselves. They fell for the trap that the Tal Shiar led them into. He says they could have simply sidestepped it and not fallen into a state of fear. But seriously, wash your hands. The past is written, but the future is for us to write with our openness and our optimism and our spirit of curiosity, and not crawling all over each other to buy toilet paper. This was Jean-Luc Picard at his best, you guys, reminding me why he's always been my favorite captain. His ability to look past the worst parts of human nature and strive for something greater than what can be achieved, not by social distancing ourselves from progress, but by all of us working together to do and be better. But also, don't go outside right now. I do have questions about the visions the Zhat Vash saw and the Conclave of 8, though. The first being that amongst all the destruction we saw flash before their eyes on that planet, at one point we see a synthetic robot face that briefly turns into Data's face. Data's face was just an association the Romulans made in their minds when they're interpreting the data that they saw. It wasn't really what they actually saw. But also, why are we assuming the vision they saw of Data was actually Data at all? At that point, Data had been dead for a very long time. What if what they saw was in fact a vision of Lore? I still firmly believe that Lore is going to show up in this series at some point, either as a reference or perhaps also disassembled in a drawer somewhere like B4 was, perhaps on Soji's homeworld. If Bruce Maddox was trying to get as many neurons from Data as he could, it would make sense that after the synth ban, he tried to find the remains of Lore to help speed up his work, and that Soji and Dodge have both Data and Lore's essence inside of them. That sounded dirty. A light side and a dark side, the sister who died and the sister who becomes the destroyer of worlds. On the La Sirena, when Picard and the crew are putting together all the broken pieces of what they know so far, Rios compares the destroyer of worlds theory to Zefram Cochrane's warp engine. Once you reach a certain threshold, someone is going to show up. In this case, he was talking about how the Vulcans showed up once Cochrane broke the warp barrier in First Contact. But when it comes to the synths, he's talking about once synthetics are allowed to reach a certain level of development, there might be a big bad that shows up, an unstoppable villain that has been waiting for this so he can take advantage of it somehow. To me, this means that synths aren't necessarily bad, but perhaps there's an evil super AI out there waiting for a synth to be created that's advanced enough to hold its consciousness so it can take over and explode all sentient life in the galaxy. Yes, I do think we're dealing with Star Trek Discovery's Control AI, which is fine as long as it's done well, but it would be nice to be dealing with with a threat that's fresh and new too, don't you think? Apparently the impossible Conclave of 8 star system we see in this episode was not a natural occurrence. The race from 200,000 years ago were so powerful and godlike that they can move stars and planets and rearrange them as a warning even after they were destroyed. Could the Conclave of 8 have been made by the Q Continuum? Could it be that all the Q that we've met over the years on these various Star Trek series be all that's left of this ancient civilization? Maybe that's why they're called the Continuum. They're continuing on after the rest of their people were destroyed. It's also mentioned in Star Trek canon that battles between different Qs can manifest themselves as supernovas in our plane of existence. Is that how the Romulan sun actually went supernova? 2 Qs fighting each other? One thing I do know is that Commodore O and Narissa are mass murderers, and there's nothing they can do to redeem themselves. You hear that, writers? They're irredeemable, just like Philippa Georgiou is irredeemable. I understand it's not a black or white situation, which is appreciated. We're not dumb, and you see that, but you need to hear this, okay? Philippa Georgiou is just the worst. In Broken Pieces, we also learn why Rios is the way he is, the events surrounding him getting kicked out of Starfleet, and that the timeline of those events don't make sense in this story. 9 years ago, Rios was the commander on a Curiosity-class Starfleet vessel called the Ibn Majid. Fun fact, Curiosity-class ships are a new addition to the Star Trek universe, you guys, and they're usually named after explorers. In this case, it was named after an incredibly famous navigator and cartographer from the 1400s. The Ibn Majid was captained by Alonzo Vandermeer, and when they came across 2 emissaries from an unknown world 9 years ago, one named Beautiful Flower and the other named Jana, Commodore O gave Vandermeer the order to execute both of them, or else his entire ship would be destroyed with all hands on deck. Vandermeer killed the emissaries, which were definitely synths related to Soji and Dahj. Then he killed himself because of the weight of what he had done, and that his entire belief in what Starfleet is supposed to stand for was destroyed. Everything he based his life on completely evaporated by O's order to execute B-Flower and Jana. This incident, the mission, the ship, the order was all scrapped from the records, and Starfleet threw Rios under the bus to cover their asses. Side note, when Picard talked about briefly meeting Vandermeer when he was second in command to Captain Marta Batanides, he was referring to the TNG episode Tapestry, where Q lets Picard relive the time when he got stabbed in the back by a Nausicaan. Marta was one of his best friends at Starfleet Academy, and in the alternate timeline, things got weird between the two of them after Jean-Luc showed Marta his little flute. So Beautiful Flower and Jana were synths, okay? And Jana looked exactly like Soji, you guys, but certain things don't make sense about any of this. First off, how could they both be advanced synths like Soji? 9 years ago? 14 years ago, Bruce Maddox's theory on how to create perfect androids using Data's neurons was only a theory. He then left Federation space after the synth ban to figure out how to continue his work. Are they saying that Bruce Maddox found a safe space to start his research over and develop perfect synths, one looking just like Soji, that were ready to go out and be emissaries representing an entire community of synths in just 5 years? That don't make no sense! When we caught up with Bruce on Free Cloud, he acts like Dahj and Soji are the first of their kind, and I believed him. Could it be that Beautiful Flower and Jana aren't the work of Bruce Maddox, but instead are the result of Bruce's works years from now? That the synths that Rios met on that day are from a future where Maddox androids were left alone to build their own civilization, and that Picard and the La Sirena are now on their way to a planet located outside their own time? When we met Bruce Maddox on Free Cloud, he was on the run from the Tal Shiar, who had just destroyed his lab. He was desperate and in debt to Bjayzl. He wasn't the kind of man who was capable of creating life on a hidden planet somewhere that by now would have developed into a colony of perfect synths. Could it be that Bruce Maddox is still alive on Soji's homeworld, and that the Maddox that we picked up on Free Cloud was just another synth created to throw the Tal Shiar off the scent? A Bruce Maddox that was meant to be killable. If the Tal Shiar think Bruce Maddox is dead, then they'd stop looking for him, right? If Dr. Girardi actually only killed a synth version of Bruce Maddox, whose entire purpose was to get himself killed, does that redeem her for having committed his murder? Why did Commodore O order Vandermeer to kill the emissaries? Wouldn't she have wanted to have interrogated them first so she could find out where their homeworld is? Damn it, Commodore O! I know you were Daniel Sun's girlfriend in Karate Kid 2, but come on! Also in this episode, Seven answers Elnor's SOS call that he found in Hugh's office on the Borg cube. She arrives to find Elnor fighting for his life and decides to activate the cube in an attempt to take it away from the Romulans. Once the cube starts regenerating though, Nerissa begins killing Borg drones and XBs, so Seven reluctantly interfaces with the cube to become its new queen to help give the XBs a fighting chance. I love this scene, you guys. The care taken in the writing to show us Seven's objections to becoming the queen, that she'd be taking away their individuality and enslaving them to her will, but then she has to do it anyway to save their lives. She was also worried that she wouldn't want to release them afterwards, that she'd be committing the same injustice that was done to her all those years ago. It was very powerful. One question I have though is that once she became the queen, the XBs shouldn't be able to be controlled by her, right? I mean, they've been rehabilitated. Their Borg gear that controlled their minds has been removed, right? Maybe they can still hear Queen Seven's wishes, just like Picard can still hear the Borg when he's like nearby, but perhaps the XBs were able to choose whether to follow Seven's suggestions or not. I don't know. I do know that hearing Seven say "we are the Borg" gave me chills. I mean, I didn't expect to hear those words in this season of the show, let alone from 7 of 9. Seven was then released from the Queen's chambers because Annika still has work to do, you guys, which is true. With Hugh gone and the Romulans all fleeing to find Soji's homeworld, that cube and all the XBs on it are alone. It seems to me that 7 of 9 is now stuck on that cube for good from now on, you guys. She's now in charge of taking care of all the XBs aboard, as well as any drones that maybe she's able to beam back, because as we all know, Borg drones can survive the vacuum of space for at least a little while. Does this mean that the next time we see Seven is when she shows up with the cube to help Picard out in the finale, as well as drop Elnor back off with his friends? Yeah, probably. Now that Picard's in really deep and has learned the truth of what's going on with the Tal Shiar, he has a meeting with Admiral Clancy going on and on about what he's learned, what he wants her to do about it, that he wants a Starfleet squadron issued as backup to help him out. He then calls her a waste of space, at which time she tells him to shut the front door because she's going to give him all those things when he gets to Deep Space 12. He's won. She believes him. When he gets to Deep Space 12, he's just got to stay there and wait for the squadron. I don't know about you guys, but it seems a little too early for Admiral Clancy to be on our side so easily. Picard is making all these claims about the Mars attack and the truth about the Tal Shiar and the Romulans, and that he learned this all from a cyberneticist whose entire life's work was ruined by the Federation's synth ban. Oh, and who also happens to be a murderer? He's listening to a drug-addicted conspiracy theorist and a hermit ship captain who might have a grudge against Starfleet after being diagnosed with post-traumatic dysphoria. He's making these grandiose claims against Starfleet's head of security being a Romulan spy and a mass murderer who's been secretly pulling strings in the Federation for decades. Yeah, I don't think Clancy is in cahoots with the Romulans, but there's no way she was going to take Picard's word for it, you guys. Deep Space 12 was going to be a trap. If the La Sirena showed up there, they'd all be taken in by Starfleet. So far, this first season of Star Trek Picard has been an amazing ride of not only intrigue and mystery, but of personal journey and inner reflection upon such an accomplished Star Trek icon. Jean-Luc Picard is definitely going where no man has gone before, which brings me to my next question about this series. Why do the writers on Star Trek Picard hate women so much? I'm sorry, you guys, but it's starting to become too evident to ignore, okay? Almost all the women on this show are portrayed as jerks, while the men are lifted up as the true heroes of the story. Commodore O, Nerissa, Ramda are all mass murderers. Admiral Clancy's a dick. Men aren't banned from being Jat Vash, but they usually don't qualify to join because they're not as evil as Romulan women are. Raffi's a drug-addicted, deadbeat mother. Dr. Agnes Jurati is a lying murderer who uses men to satisfy her womanly urges. But Jazel tricks unsuspecting victims in order to steal their body parts. Laris obviously has anger issues, causing her to lash out towards the opposite sex. Soji's guilty of elderly abuse and has sex with men before even learning their names. Dosh falls asleep every time she talks to her poor mother on the phone, which is rude. And 7 of 9 is the freaking Borg queen. Well, Narek is a man and he's a jerk, but he's a very beautiful man, and that's suspicious to me. How about you? Do you think the Q Continuum were the race of people who created the Conclave of 8? Is Dr. Jurati redeemable for what she did to Bruce Maddox, even if he turns out to have been a synth the entire time? Do you think it's possible that Star Trek Discovery's Control AI is out there just waiting for Rey Skywalker, Soji, to become its new vessel for evil? You can let me know what you think by joining the conversation below. I'll see you very soon, and as always, I hope all your times are egotastic fun times. Love you, bye-bye!